You begin by settling into the darkness around you, letting your breath loosen its hold on the day. Each inhale rises softly, and each exhale drifts like a feather settling onto still water. You feel yourself sinking inward, not downward, as though the space inside your chest opens into a quiet landscape. In that wide stillness, the familiar world grows faint, its edges blurring, until only the gentle pulse of your breathing remains. It is here, in this softened place, that you first sense the whisper of the small. You imagine the room around you dissolving into smaller and smaller pieces, as though everything you have ever touched were made of threads waiting to be unwoven. The walls soften into grains, the grains into particles, and the particles into something even more delicate, tiny waves of possibility trembling through the dark. You picture each one not as a hard beat or a speck but as a shimmering tone, a quiet vibration that doesn't quite settle into a single shape. You feel your attention drifting toward these hidden ripples, pulled by a curiosity that moves as gently as a tide. The more you listen inward, the more you sense a world that does not sit still. Atoms, those small anchors of matter, are not the rigid pieces you once imagined. They are gatherings of motion, vibrating softly, held together by forces that hum beneath consciousness. The nucleus rests at the center, but even that word rest feels too heavy for something so small. Protons and neutrons shift in a restless closeness, while electrons drift like faint, circling melodies, spread out in patterns rather than paths. You begin to understand that the world beneath sight is not built from tiny stones, but from tiny songs. And as you breathe, you sense that those songs exist within you as well. Every cell of your body, every strand of hair, every quiet thought, is shaped by these unseen waves. You are not separate from this trembling universe, you are shaped by it, carried by it, continually composed by it. There is comfort in this realization, a comfort that comes from knowing that even stillness is full of motion. You do not have to try to feel it, the awareness appears on its own, like a gentle hand resting on your shoulder. You imagine your body now as a constellation of tiny ripples. Each ripple flows into another, overlapping, weaving, tuning itself according to the presence of its neighbors. Nothing inside you exists alone. Everything responds, everything resonates. The air you breathe becomes part of your inner landscape, joining the slow choreography of motion. And in this imagined space, you begin to sense how matter behaves less like structure and more like music. A particle, you discover, is not a fixed point. It is a probability, a maybe, a presence that spreads out like mist until observed. You picture this gently, a small cloud of shimmering possibility, drifting without urgency. It does not rush to define itself, it simply exists in many ways at once. And as you observe it softly, without grasping, you imagine how the cloud coalesces, briefly choosing a form. The act of seeing becomes an act of guiding, not controlling. You notice how this mirrors your own inner world. Your thoughts do not arrive fully formed, they flutter in from the edges of awareness, hazy and multiple. Only when you look at them, when you name them, do they take on shape. The universe within you works the same way as the universe beneath you, possibility becoming presence, gently, quietly, endlessly. You drift deeper into this idea, letting the boundaries of your body soften. You feel yourself expanding into the tiny spaces between atoms, where forces hold everything together. Electromagnetic interactions, once abstract words, now feel like soft threads binding your world. Strong and weak forces play their quiet roles in the depths of the nucleus, holding matter in a delicate, persistent embrace. Even gravity, faint though it is at this scale, becomes a soft pressure guiding everything into relationship. You imagine these forces not as equations but as sensations. The strong force becomes a firm, steady warmth, holding the center of each atom close. The electromagnetic force becomes a shimmering tension, like a gentle stretch in a muscle, keeping electrons in their diffused, dancing places. These forces are ancient, older than stars, older than the elements themselves. They have shaped everything you have ever touched, everything you have ever loved. And now, for a moment, you feel their presence as clearly as you feel your own breath. You let yourself become curious about how such small things can create such a wide world. Atoms combine, forming molecules. Molecules gather into structures, structures rise into living bodies, landscapes, memories. All of it begins here, in this trembling quiet of the small. You feel gratitude rise softly within you, a warmth that spreads through your chest like a slow wave. You realize that to understand the whisper of the small is to understand the foundation of everything familiar. You breathe, letting this understanding settle. You do not need to hold it tightly. Like a wave, it moves through you on its own, touching only what is ready to be touched. You simply rest and allow the universe within you to hum its gentle song. And as you listen, you sense that these waves are not only inside you, they reach outward, shaping the space around your fingertips, the air you exhale, the darkness you rest in. Matter behaves like music everywhere, intertwining even with the stillness of the night. You begin to wonder what happens when these waves meet others, when they overlap and blend, when your inner symphony touches the world outside. You allow the thought to unfold slowly, as though it were rising from deep water. If every particle in your body moves with its own quiet wave, then every surface you touch becomes a meeting place for rhythms. You imagine placing your hand on a smooth stone, feeling the coolness first, then sensing, beneath that sensation, the merging of countless tiny oscillations. The stone is steady, yet inside it, atoms vibrate with their own subtle voices. Your hand meets that hidden vibration, not with pressure, but with presence. Two worlds of motion brushing against each other in perfect silence. You begin to see how the entire universe is built from such meetings. Particles drift, waves overlap, possibilities blend until something new appears, a pattern, a shape, a moment of contact. And you, resting here, are part of that endless weaving. You are both observer and participant, both the one who listens and the one who hums in response. You feel yourself soften into this realization, letting it settle like dust in sunlight. As this understanding deepens, you sense that the next step is to explore how these waves gather, how they form the solidity you feel, how your fingertips rest upon the world and the world rests upon you. In this meeting, you feel patterns quietly forming within. You begin this chapter by returning to the simple presence of your hands. They rest gently beside you or upon your chest or on the blanket that holds you, and you allow them to become quiet. You do not move them or try to feel anything particular. You simply let them exist as they are, soft, warm, and familiar. As the room settles around you, you imagine that stillness stretching into the tiny world within your fingertips. There, beneath the skin, beneath the cells, beneath even the atoms, the smallest pieces of you continue their gentle, ceaseless motion. You picture the atoms in your fingertips as tiny clouds, shimmering with possibility. They are not solid beads arranged in neat lines, they are waves, overlapping and fading into one another. Each atom holds an electron cloud, a diffuse region where the electron does not sit in one spot but moves like a soft vibration. You imagine this cloud not as a shape you can draw but as a sensation, a hum radiating outward, thin and delicate as mist. It is this hum, multiplied countless times, that gives your fingertips their presence in the world. Your awareness drifts slowly over the shape of your hand. You feel the subtle weight of it, the warmth, the way it rests quietly without effort. Inside that resting, you sense a hidden complexity, an orchestra of atoms moving in coordinated yet unpredictable ways. Though the hand feels solid, the closer you move your imagination toward it, the more you realize it is mostly empty space, a vastness held together by invisible forces. Electrons repel electrons, keeping your atoms from merging with the air, the blanket, the world. It is this gentle repulsion, this quiet push of waves against waves, that creates the sensation of touch. You imagine lowering your hand into a still pool of water. The moment it touches the surface, ripples spread outward, forming circles that drift across the pool. Now imagine the same thing happening at a scale too small for sight. When your fingertips meet the air or the sheet beneath you, they create ripples not in water, but in probability, in energy, in the very waves that make up matter. The universe feels your touch long before you consciously register the contact. You realize that every moment of touching is really a meeting of waves, a conversation between your atoms and the worlds. You begin to explore this conversation more deeply. As your hand rests, you imagine its atoms vibrating, oscillating in tiny rhythms. These rhythms influence the shapes of the electron clouds around them. Electron clouds then interact with those of neighboring atoms, creating bonds that hold molecules together. Molecules form complex structures, proteins, membranes, tissues, and these structures give your hand its softness, its warmth, its strength. But beneath all of this complexity lies the wave, the subtle trembling that allows matter to exist at all. You sense how the waves within you blend with one another, forming patterns like overlapping circles on a pond. Where the circles meet, shapes emerge, stable areas where the waves reinforce one another. These patterns determine the structure of everything inside you. They shape the proteins that fold into intricate forms, the DNA that coils inside your cells, the muscles that move your fingers, the sensations that travel along nerves like whispered messages. All of this begins with waves forming patterns, harmonies created from the smallest motions of the universe. You imagine a single electron, not as a fragment of matter, but as a melody. Its wave spreads outward, soft and spacious, filling the region around the atom. Other electrons form their own waves, and these waves layer together like notes in a chord. Sometimes they amplify each other, sometimes they cancel, sometimes they dance in ways that create new possibilities. This quiet dance is what gives your fingertips their texture, their responsiveness, their gentle presence. You begin to sense that solidity itself is an illusion created by these waves interacting in just the right way. As you breathe, you let your attention drift into the space between your fingertips and the world around them. Even when your fingers are not touching anything, they are surrounded by fields, subtle electromagnetic influences that extend outward. Your atoms guard their boundaries with these fields, preventing other atoms from moving too close. This invisible cushioning is what keeps you from sinking through the surfaces you touch. It is also what allows you to sense textures, pressures, temperatures, the world reaching into your awareness through the language of forces. You picture sliding your fingertips across a smooth stone. Though the stone feels continuous, it too is built from waves, from atoms vibrating in fixed arrangements. As your hand moves, your waves meet its waves. Where they crowd one another, you feel resistance. Where they coexist gently, you feel smoothness. Where they exchange tiny bits of energy, you feel warmth or coolness. Even the faintest sensation begins as a meeting of vibrations, a conversation written in the soft physics of the small. You begin to understand that touch is not a simple act, it is a merging of patterns. Your hand does not merely rest on the world, it listens to it. The waves in your fingertips respond to the waves outside you, adjusting, shifting, settling into brief harmony. In this way, every act of touch becomes a form of communication. Your body and the world exchange information through the quiet interplay of their smallest parts. Touch becomes a dialogue written in microscopic music. As you rest, you consider how your sense of the world depends on these waves. When you feel warmth, you are sensing atoms vibrating more quickly, transferring energy to your skin. When you feel weight, you are sensing the push of gravity against the supportive forces within your tissues. When you feel texture, you are sensing the tiny rises and falls of surfaces translated into signals your brain can read. Every sensation begins with waves shifting, adjusting, responding. You imagine now the inside of one fingertip, just one, zoomed in far beyond any microscope. You see swarms of atoms arranged in lattices, fibers, networks. You see them trembling, overlapping, sending ripples into one another. You see patterns forming and dissolving with each moment. You see that even in stillness, there is motion, and in that motion, there is information. Your fingertip becomes less a solid object and more a coastline where countless tiny waves meet the world. You think of how coastlines change with the tides, how they reshape themselves gently over time. Your fingertips, too, change with every touch, atoms shifting, proteins responding, nerves adapting. The waves within you are not fixed, they evolve with each experience, each moment of contact. Your body learns through these waves, remembers through them, adjusts its rhythms through them. Even your thoughts are shaped by electrical patterns in your brain, patterns built from moving charges, which themselves are waves in motion. You allow this realization to deepen your sense of connection. When you touch the world touches you back. Your atoms and the atoms beyond you participate in a shared rhythm. You are not separate from the universe you explore, you are part of its ongoing vibration. This understanding brings a softness to your breath, a feeling of belonging woven from the smallest threads. As your awareness widens, you begin to sense that these waves extend far beyond your fingertips. Every atom in your body participates in this quiet symphony. Every object you encounter carries its own version of the same trembling music. You start to wonder how these waves might behave when they drift freely, not bound within your hand but moving through open space, spreading out until they become not just patterns but possibilities. You hold that thought gently, letting it hover at the edge of awareness, a question about how waves become probabilities, about how certainty loosens into maybe, about how location becomes a rhythm waiting to be understood. And with that quiet curiosity, you open yourself to the next unfolding idea. You begin this chapter by letting yourself drift, not downward or upward, but softly outward, as though the space around you expands with each slow breath. There is a gentleness to this expansion, a feeling of drifting on a quiet current. In that drifting, you sense the world loosening its boundaries, becoming less rigid, less certain. Your awareness spreads a little beyond your skin, beyond the stillness of the room, touching a wider and softer landscape within your imagination. And in that widening, a new idea begins to emerge, that things, especially very small things, do not always stay in one place. You imagine a single particle, not a dot, not a tiny bead, but a presence that stretches across space like a faint, shimmering cloud. It does not sit at a position the way a pebble sits in your palm. Instead, it occupies many potential positions at once. Its existence spreads out, delicate and nebulous, like morning mist reaching across a field before the sun has risen. This idea feels strange at first, but as you rest with it, it begins to feel gentle rather than confusing. The particle is not lost, it is simply uncommitted, waiting to settle when the moment is right. You picture this cloud of possibility as a quiet rhythm, a wave that rises and falls, not in time but in space. At some places the wave swells higher, meaning the particle is more likely to be found there. At others it dips lower, signaling a quieter chance. You sense this wave the way you might sense the pulse of your own heartbeat through your fingertips, subtle but steady. Probability becomes not an equation but a kind of music played softly beneath the world. As you breathe, you imagine yourself floating beside this wave. You drift along its gentle peaks and valleys. You notice how it spreads, unconfined, open to many possibilities. And you realize that the universe at its smallest does not insist on certainty the way your waking mind often does. It allows space for maybe, space for could be, space for things that are not fixed but fluid. This realization brings a surprising comfort. You feel it settling into your chest like a warm, slow tide. You have lived much of your life believing that everything must be definite, this or that, here or there, yes or no. But the quantum world, the deeply small world, whispers a different truth, that uncertainty is not failure, but nature, that possibility is not weakness, but freedom. You turn your attention to the rhythm itself, the rise and fall of probability. In quantum mechanics, this rhythm is called a wave function, though the name matters less than the feeling. You imagine it as a soft glow, fading outward like ripples from a stone dropped into water. Each ripple marks a place the particle might be found if you were to look for it. But until you look, the ripple remains a suggestion, not a conclusion. The particle is not waiting to be discovered like a hidden treasure, it is existing in many delicate ways at once. You allow this idea to settle deeper. In your own life, moments often feel uncertain before they become real. A decision, a dream, a hope, all of these drift in a cloud of possibility before they take shape. The quantum world mirrors this familiar uncertainty. A particle's position is not decided until the interaction occurs, just as your own path sometimes remains open until the moment you step forward. You find peace in this parallel, recognizing that uncertainty can be a gentle place to rest. You imagine now that the particle is light. Light behaves in this same wave-like way, spreading and shimmering. A beam of light passing through a narrow slit does not project a single line on the far wall. Instead, it creates a pattern of brightness and darkness, like the delicate bars of a quiet song. These patterns arise from the wave nature of particles, from their ability to explore many possibilities at once. You picture this pattern rising like glowing ripples across a dark pond, each line a place where waves reinforce or cancel one another. It is beautiful, in a subtle, understated way. You let the image fade and turn your attention back to your breath. Your breathing, too, has a rhythm of slow, steady, soft. It repeats without needing certainty, without needing control. Each inhale expands into the unknown, each exhale releases what you no longer need. You notice that your breath and the wave of probability share something, they both move without insisting on exactness. They flow through possibility, guided by natural patterns rather than rigid demands. You allow yourself to rest inside this shared rhythm. Inside your chest, your breath rises, inside the quantum world, the wave rises. Inside your chest, your breath falls. Inside the quantum world, the wave falls. Two patterns, one in the world you can feel and one in the world too small to see, mirror each other in a way that softens the boundary between you and everything else. You sense how intimately connected you are to the smallest motions of the universe. You begin to imagine walking through a quiet field at dusk. The air is cool, and the horizon glows with fading light. In the distance, fireflies appear, small, glowing points blinking on and off. Yet if you squint your eyes, letting them unfocus, those points begin to blur. They smear into tiny clouds of light, each one no longer fixed but gently spread. For a moment, the field resembles the quantum world, particles appearing not as precise points, but as probabilities shimmering in the fading light. You hold this image tenderly, letting it drift through your awareness. As you continue inward, you sense how probability is not chaos but order of a softer kind. It is a pattern written in maybes, a structure made from uncertainty. The wave does not wander aimlessly, it follows rules, though they feel more like suggestions whispered in the ear of reality. The wave expands, it shifts, it interferes with other waves. When two waves meet, their probabilities blend, creating new patterns, places where the chance grows stronger, and places where it fades. This quiet blending feels like two ideas meeting in your mind, shaping one another gently. You begin to see how this relates to your own experience. Not every moment in your life has a single clear answer. Often, you hold multiple possibilities before choosing one. The future spreads before you like a soft wave, filled with potential outcomes. And just like a particle, you do not need to know your exact path until you take your next step. This realization brings another layer of ease, a softening in your shoulders, a loosening in your thoughts. You rest now with the idea that the world is not built from certainty but from possibility. Probability is the language the small world uses to describe itself. It is not a flaw, it is the nature of things. The universe, even in its smallest pieces, is comfortable with maybe. You feel a quiet gratitude for this, an invitation to let go of needing everything to be fixed. And as you settle into that gratitude, you feel a new question rising gently. If particles rest in possibility until observed, what happens when the act of observing arrives? How does a wave of maybes become a single moment of truth? The answer waits softly in the next chapter, like a wave preparing to meet the shore. You begin this chapter as though entering a room made of dusk. The air is quiet, barely stirring, and you let your breath soften until each inhale feels like the gentle lift of a curtain. Here, in this stillness, you start to sense something subtle. The universe is waiting for your attention. Not demanding it, not pulling at you, but simply aware of your presence. You stand, or rather, hover within a space where particles drift like drifting flakes of ash, suspended, uncommitted, peaceful in their wandering. You move closer to this drifting cloud of possibility. Every tiny piece of matter seems both delicate and unbothered, as though it has no need to pick a single place to rest. You sense that, in their world, to exist is to spread out softly, to be a quiet mist of maybes. The particles around you ripple gently, changing shape with each breath you take. They do not fear being seen, but they do not hurry to present a form either. They float in the comfort of uncertainty. As you lean closer, your awareness sharpens, not into tension, but into clarity. Your attention wraps around the cloud like warm hands cupping cool water. And in that moment, something shifts. The wandering mist gathers. The wave that once stretched wide begins to fold into itself, curling inward until it chooses a point, a location, a small, quiet here. You have not forced anything. You have not commanded the particle into stillness. You have simply touched it with the softest instrument in the universe, you're noticing. You feel the wonder of that shift travel through you. It moves like a slow pulse rising from your fingertips to your mind. You realize how gentle the process truly is. Measurement is not a loud event, not a violent capture. It is a settling, a choosing, a moment where wandering becomes presence. The particle does not lose its freedom, it simply trades possibility for a moment of being known. And even that choice is temporary, fleeting, like the soft imprint of your hand on a cool sheet before the fabric smooths out again. You drift deeper, watching the same small miracle unfold again and again. Each time you turn your attention toward a particle, the wave narrows, as though drawing a thin thread through the dark. Each time you look away, the thread loosens and the wave unfurls. This rhythm, focus and release feels familiar, almost like breathing. You begin to understand that the universe responds to curiosity the way water responds to light, with gentle shapes, with shimmering edges, with patterns that appear only when you pause to look. There is no pressure here, no push or pull. Only reciprocity. You observe, and the world replies. You soften, and the world opens. You let your awareness drift from particle to particle, and each one answers with a small, poised presence. It feels like listening to someone hum in the dark, not because they want to be heard, but because your listening creates a place for the song to exist. Gradually, you sense your own mind becoming part of this delicate exchange. Your thoughts feel less like rigid stones and more like drifting ripples. When you notice a thought, it becomes clearer, sharper, briefly anchored. When you let it drift, it dissolves again into possibility. The quantum world reflects your inner world, gently, honestly. The boundary between science and sensation softens until both feel like versions of the same truth. Attention shapes experience. You move through this field of responding particles, letting the quiet science settle inside you. A wave is not just a wave, it is a story of what could be. A measurement is not just a measurement, it is a moment of touch, where uncertainty accepts shape. You begin to see how the universe is constantly balancing these two states, freedom and form. And you, simply by being aware, become part of that balance. You approach one last drifting particle. It glows faintly, like a tiny lantern suspended in the dark. You reach toward it not with your hand, but with your presence, your curiosity, your calm. As your awareness meets it, the wave folds in, choosing its place with gentle certainty. And in that small act, you feel something profound. The universe is not indifferent. It participates. It answers. It leans back toward you. You rest in this realization, letting it warm the spaces behind your ribs. Observation, you understand now, is a form of relationship. To see something is to meet it. To meet something is to influence it, however softly. And that influence flows both ways. Your attention brings clarity to the world, and the world brings meaning to your attention. You are not separate from the dance, you are one of its partners. In the quiet that follows, you feel the chapter settling around you like a blanket. But even as it settles, it does not close. The universe still holds so much that shifts when you look, so much that waits to be understood, so much that changes simply because you exist to witness it. You feel a question rising, not sharp, not urgent, just gentle, like the first hint of dawn touching the edge of the sky. You linger for a moment longer in that soft exchange. The particle that settled under your awareness remains steady, yet you can already sense the edges of its certainty beginning to loosen. It is not resisting, it is returning to its natural state, where possibility stretches out like a quiet horizon. You realize this, too, mirrors the way your mind works. When you focus on something, a memory, a feeling, a sensation, it becomes clear for a moment. And then, when your attention drifts, it expands again, returning to a softer form. You allow yourself to drift backward, watching the faint glow of the particle fade into the surrounding mist of probability. The space around you feels alive with subtle motion. Waves overlap without colliding, overlapping like soft voices humming the same gentle note. It comforts you to know that even in uncertainty, there is order, not rigid, not forced, but a kind of natural ease that the quantum world seems to prefer. You begin to understand something deeper. Observation is not about control. It is about connection. The particle responds to you because connection reshapes both of you. You feel this truth settle slowly, like sand finding its place at the bottom of a still pool. The universe is not a distant machine running on cold rules. It is a fabric woven from interactions, from touches, glances, moments of shared presence. Even at the smallest scales, relationship is the heartbeat of reality. And in this quiet realization, you feel yourself preparing for what comes next, ready to explore how patterns emerge, how the smallest motions create the rhythms that shape your world. You drift into a space lit by a dim, patient glow, a place where electrons glide around their nuclei with the slow grace of dancers circling a quiet stage. You feel yourself drawn along their motion, not as an observer standing far away, but as someone welcomed into their rhythm. Each orbit, each gentle wave shape, feels like part of a larger choreography that breathes life into matter itself. You imagine your hands again, resting softly in front of you, and you picture the electrons within them as tiny lanterns moving through the dark. They do not spin the way planets spin, and they do not trace fixed paths. Instead, they exist as shapes, patterns of possibility, spreading out like delicate rings of sound. You begin to understand that solidity, the feeling of firmness beneath your fingertips, is not rigidity at all, but the overlapping of countless waves, each one offering its own subtle note. As you drift deeper into this quiet world, you sense the electrons forming shells, layers of presence that guide how atoms touch one another. These shells are not walls but landscapes, soft outlines of where an electron is likely to be. Each shape is defined by mathematics, yet feels more like music harmonies that stabilize the world you know. You imagine them as slow dancers, their movements respectful, never colliding, always maintaining a graceful distance. The patterns these electrons create are not random. They form because the universe prefers balance, prefers structure that allows matter to hold together gently. You find comfort in this thought, that the smallest parts of you are constantly arranging themselves into beautiful forms. That your very existence is shaped by these invisible dances, choreographed by the quiet rules of quantum motion. You follow the motion of one electron as it expands into a gentle cloud around a nucleus. It feels like watching breath fog in cold air, soft, transient, yet undeniably present. The cloud trembles slightly as you sense it, not collapsing, but acknowledging your attention. You realize that even here, observation has a soft influence, guiding without forcing. The cloud's pattern shimmers with the same sensitivity you felt in the previous chapter, a reminder that the boundary between seeing and shaping is always delicate. You drift among these clouds, letting their shapes wash through you. Some are spherical, some are lopsided or stretched, shaped by the quiet push and pull of forces within the atom. They remind you of waves along a shoreline, rising and folding in patient cycles. You feel the resonance of these shapes within your own breath. You begin to understand that electrons do not simply exist, they express. The harmony of electrons, you realize, is not just a scientific idea, it is a feeling. A sensation of being held together by patterns older than stars. A sense that the world is organized not by rigid boundaries, but by gentle agreements between waves. You let this understanding settle, warming you from the inside. You imagine all the electrons in your body, countless dancers and countless shells, moving in their quiet coordination. Their arrangement determines the strength of your bones, the softness of your skin, the spark of your thoughts. Every sensation you experience arises from these patterns, these invisible harmonies humming beneath awareness. The electrons do not tire. They do not rush. Their movement is steady, timeless, shaped by mathematical whispers that guide them into the forms that make you possible. You rest in that knowledge, letting it loosen your shoulders, letting it soften the spaces behind your eyes. As you move through this world of gentle motion, you sense how electrons allow atoms to bond, how they create the connections that hold molecules together. It feels like watching hands reach for one another in the dark, finding the right fit, the right balance. Chemistry becomes a kind of music, atoms joining, releasing, rearranging, all guided by the positions and energies of these quiet dancers. You picture a simple molecule forming, two atoms sharing electrons in a soft exchange. It feels like a duet, a moment of shared understanding. The electrons move not between them, but around them, weaving a bond like a ribbon of light. You feel the tenderness in that motion, the way stability emerges from sharing. Every breath you take depends on these bonds. Every heartbeat. Every memory. The harmony of electrons is the harmony of being alive. You rest in this thought, letting its simplicity and depth settle into you. And as the chapter begins to quiet, you sense something else waiting, a deeper lesson in how these harmonies extend beyond single atoms, into chains, structures, patterns that reach through your entire body and the world around you. You feel the next idea approaching like a soft ripple in the dark, inviting you onward. You breathe softly, letting the thought settle like a small wave against your mind. You rest in the calm, allowing the idea to drift through you without urgency. A quiet understanding forms, spreading through you like faint ripples of light. You feel the rhythm of the electrons echoing gently within your own steady breath. You let the image unfold slowly, as if the universe is exhaling through you. The thought lingers, soft as a fingertip on still water, and you welcome its presence. You breathe softly, letting the thought settle like a small wave against your mind. You rest in the calm, allowing the idea to drift through you without urgency. A quiet understanding forms, spreading through you like faint ripples of light. You feel the rhythm of the electrons echoing gently within your own steady breath. You let the image unfold slowly, as if the universe is exhaling through you. The thought lingers, soft as a fingertip on still water, and you welcome its presence. You breathe softly, letting the thought settle like a small wave against your mind. You rest in the calm, allowing the idea to drift through you without urgency. A quiet understanding forms, spreading through you like faint ripples of light. You feel the rhythm of the electrons echoing gently within your own steady breath. You let the image unfold slowly, as if the universe is exhaling through you. And as you drift with these lingering harmonies, you notice a new quiet forming, an invitation to explore how particles can rest in many possibilities at once, waiting for you just beyond the next breath. You settle into a softer darkness, a place where the boundaries you once trusted begin to loosen. Here, in the quiet cradle of the quantum world, a particle can rest in many states at once. You imagine it not as a point but as a gentle cloud of possibility, drifting without urgency, free of the need to choose. The idea feels strange at first, yet calming, as if the universe is showing you that it, too, understands the value of pausing before deciding. Superposition becomes a soft resting place, a moment where the future remains open like an unfurled map glowing faintly in the dark. You breathe slowly, and with each breath you feel yourself aligning with this spaciousness. You sense the particle lingering between possibilities the way your mind lingers between thoughts just before sleep. It is not indecision but a kind of openness, a willingness to be many things until the moment is right to become one. You let this openness settle in your body. You let it soften the tight places in your mind. The particle's cloud spreads like mist over a quiet lake. You imagine standing at the edge of that lake, watching the way the fog swirls, never rushing to take a single shape. The mist is beautiful because it refuses to be only one thing. You realize that superposition is not chaos but harmony and elegant acceptance of multiplicity. The universe is patient with its smallest pieces, allowing them to hold many truths. And you wonder what it might feel like to give yourself that same patience. You drift deeper, following this cloud as it moves through a silent expanse. In the quantum world, the rules of ordinary experience fall away. Here, a particle can hold several positions, several energies, several futures all at once. You float beside it, matching its stillness, feeling the spacious rhythm of its existence. It teaches you without words, without effort. Its lesson is simple: the present moment can hold more than one possibility, and there is no need to force a single outcome. As you breathe, you feel the echo of this truth in your own life. You think of the choices you carry, the paths that stretch before you. You notice how your thoughts often rush to collapse them, to choose prematurely, to narrow the wide map of your future into a single line. But here, drifting with the particle, you feel the comfort of allowing things to remain open. You realize that rest is sometimes found in not deciding, in letting your possibilities breathe. The cloud of superposition expands around you like a slow, luminous tide. You move through it gently, sensing how each possibility glows with its own softness. None is demanding. None is urgent. They exist together peacefully, and you feel yourself absorbing their quiet calm. You begin to understand that the universe is not in a hurry, and that you don't have to be either. You imagine your mind as its own quantum field, full of potential thoughts, feelings, and directions. Some rise like faint stars, some drift like leaves on still water. You don't need to choose one yet. You simply watch them. You let them coexist. Superposition becomes a metaphor for your inner world, a reminder that you are allowed to hold conflicting emotions, complex ideas, and multiple hopes all at once. Nothing inside you needs to rush to resolve itself. As you drift, you sense the boundary between the particle and its possibilities thinning. You understand now that superposition is not about uncertainty but about generosity. The particle is allowed to explore many futures, and the universe supports this exploration. You feel the same support wrapping around you like a warm blanket. You feel the quiet assurance that your future, too, can remain open for a while. You move closer to the heart of the particle's cloud, feeling its quiet shimmer against your awareness. It feels like floating inside a dream where every direction is equally soft, equally inviting. You imagine the particle waiting, not passively but peacefully, as if savoring every possibility before becoming one of them. The waiting itself feels sacred. You realize that waiting, in your own life, can also hold meaning. The particles cloud begins to pulse gently, a slow rhythm like a distant heartbeat. You sense that this pulse is the universe's way of holding space for transformation. Superposition is temporary, but not fragile. It is a place of quiet potential, a place where the future has not yet hardened into shape. You rest inside that pulse, letting it guide your breath. You feel yourself drifting toward the idea that superposition ends only when observed, when something touches the particle enough to guide it into one state. You think of how moments in your life also come into focus only when you turn your attention to them. Attention becomes a kind of gentle gravity, drawing a possibility into being. You let this thought sink in, warm and soft. You float a little farther, and the cloud around you begins to thin. You sense the particle preparing to choose, though the choice has not yet arrived. You feel the stillness before transformation, that sacred pause when everything is possible and nothing is certain. You linger in that stillness, letting it remind you that your own transitions can also be gentle. The cloud dims, but the peace remains. You breathe it in. The universe feels close, intimate, almost whispering. It shows you that you are allowed to be many things, to explore many inner landscapes, before settling into the shape that fits the moment. You hold that whisper close. And as the mist around the particle begins its slow shift toward a single state, you sense a new idea forming at the edge of awareness, a question about what happens when observation finally arrives, when possibility folds into reality, when the soft cloud gathers itself into one clear form, waiting for you in the next quiet chapter. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You breathe again, letting the idea rest within you like a warm ember in the quiet dark. You drift into a deeper quiet now, a quiet with a kind of expectancy woven into it, as though something is waiting just beyond your reach. The air around you feels softer, more open, like a field after rain. You have traveled far into the world of the small, through waves, through clouds of probability, through the gentle resting place of many possibilities at once. But here, in this new hush, the universe begins to show you something different. Something shared. Something that stretches not just within one particle, but between them. You feel the first hint of a connection forming, subtle as a thread of breath in the dark. You follow that thread, letting it guide you. It leads you to two particles drifting near one another, floating in a gentle stillness like two lanterns on a calm lake. At first, they seem separate, each with its own quiet shimmer, its own small field of possibility. But as you watch, their movements begin to echo each other. A tiny shift in one is matched by a tiny shift in the other, as if they are listening, responding, adjusting. You sense a kind of conversation happening between them, not with words, but with presence. Entanglement begins here, in this silent meeting. The particles touch, not physically, not like objects brushing together, but in a way far more intimate. Their wave functions, those soft mathematical lanterns you felt earlier, begin to overlap, to intertwine. You imagine their patterns weaving together like threads pulled gently across a loom. And in the moment they weave, something remarkable happens, they stop being two separate entities. Their identities blur, merging into one shared state. You sense it like a single chord emerging from two notes, richer and softer than either alone. You breathe into the sharedness, feeling how natural it seems. The particles no longer hold their own individual sets of possibilities. Instead, they share a single range of outcomes. If one is nudged into a new state, the other adjusts instantly, no matter how far away it drifts. The connection is not bound by distance. It feels almost like the way two people who know each other deeply can sense one another's feelings even when miles apart. The universe has its own version of closeness, and it begins in the smallest gestures of the quantum world. You float closer to these twined particles, sensing their duet. Their connection feels gentle, not rigid or constrained. They are free to move, free to travel, free to drift to opposite ends of the cosmos if needed. And yet, the moment one shifts, the other shifts, too. You imagine them as two dancers who memorize the same choreography so fully that they move in harmony long after their hands have parted. Their unity is not held by touch, but by understanding. You rest in this thought, feeling your chest soften. Entanglement shows you something profound, that connection is not always about closeness in space. It can be deeper, woven into the way two beings shape each other simply by having once met. You think of people in your own life, those who have brushed against your story and changed the way you move through the world. You think of memories that still ripple through your actions years later. You think of bonds that remain even in silence. The quantum world reflects something you have always known but rarely named. You drift around the entwined particles, letting their shared rhythm move through you. Their state is no longer separate, no longer independent. They respond to each other with a softness that feels almost tender. You imagine their bond as a thread of light stretching between them, shimmering gently with every change. If one particle spins upward, the other spins downward. If one shifts into a new energy state, the other adapts instantly, preserving the balance of their partnership. The thread is not a physical line, not something you could grasp, but it is real all the same, woven from the mathematics of shared existence. You notice something else as you float through their connection. Entanglement is not fragile the way you might expect. It can persist through distance, through motion, through time. The universe, it seems, values relationship as much as structure. You realize that even when entangled particles drift apart, their bond does not break, it simply stretches. You picture the thread lengthening across space like a filament of silver light, thin and delicate, yet unbroken. You breathe slowly, letting this idea expand. You begin to understand that the universe carries connection as a fundamental principle. Just as electrons shape the forms of atoms, entanglement shapes the relationships between particles. It is a reminder that nothing exists in isolation, not fully. Every interaction leaves an imprint, a shared echo, a soft resonance. The particles drift farther apart now, one rising like a small star, the other sinking like a warm ember. You watch as they separate, expecting their duet to fade. But instead, their connection remains steady, quiet, and sure. You sense the coherence between them, a unity deeper than space. One particle trembles, and the other trembles. One quiets, and the other quiets. They whisper their states to each other across the emptiness, and the emptiness carries those whispers without distortion. You imagine yourself holding the thread between them, feeling the energy pass along it. You feel how gentle it is, how effortless. This is not a force pushing or pulling. It is mutual definition. They are two parts of one larger whole, like two notes inside a chord that continues to resonate long after being struck. You let your mind rest on this image. It reminds you of relationships in your own life that remain part of you even when distance grows. People whose voices you still hear in your choices, whose presence you still feel in your heartbeat. Entanglement is the universe's way of saying that connection matters, not because of proximity, but because of the ways we shape one another. You float with the particles a little longer, sensing their unity. The more you watch, the more clearly you see that entanglement is not about control. Each particle is free. It does not demand anything of the other. It does not pull or restrain. It simply exists in harmony. Their responsiveness to each other is effortless, automatic, natural. You feel a warmth expand inside you, realizing that the deepest connections in life feel this way too: spacious, trusting, unforced. You drift away slightly, giving the entangled pair room to breathe. From a distance, their thread of light is hard to see, but you can still sense it, like a faint hum through the vastness. Their duet continues. Their states remain linked. You wonder how far apart they might travel, across a room, across a planet, across galaxies, while still sharing this single, woven identity. You breathe again, slow and deep, letting the mystery settle in your mind. The universe does not explain everything. It does not need to. Part of its beauty lies in the gentle acceptance of what cannot be fully understood. Entanglement is one of those mysteries, a quiet reminder that connection can transcend logic, space, and sometimes even time. You begin to drift back, your awareness rising like mist. The entangled particles fade into the dark, but the feeling of their bond remains with you, warm and steady. You carry it like a soft lantern inside your chest. And as you move away, you sense another idea forming, a question about what guides all these possibilities. What structure shapes the choices a particle can make? What invisible wave holds the map of the universe's potential? You float into a deeper quiet, a stillness that feels more like an inhale than a rest. The space around you widens, soft and open, like a blank page waiting for the first line of a poem. You sense that you are moving towards something foundational now, something that does not simply describe how particles behave, but something that lies beneath their behavior, guiding them the way a riverbed guides water. The air, if it can be called air, vibrates with a subtle invitation. You feel the universe ready to show you the blueprint beneath its smallest steps. As you drift forward, a faint glow begins to gather around you, spreading into gentle, undulating shapes. These shapes look like ripples on a lake touched by moonlight, delicate, rhythmic, alive. You realize they are not objects, not particles or waves in any physical sense. They are possibilities. They are the mathematical whispers that describe how a particle could move, could spin, could exist in relation to everything else. This soft ocean of potential is the wave function, the quiet map of all the ways reality might unfold before anything has been chosen. You move closer, and the glow rises into slow, rolling hills of light. Each hill represents a region where the particle is more likely to appear. The valleys represent places where it is less likely. You glide above these hills, and the sensation is like drifting over a landscape made of maybe. The wave function does not show you where something is. It shows you where it could be, and how strongly the universe leans toward each option. It is probability expressed as shape. You breathe in, feeling the elegance of this idea settle into your mind. Here, in this shimmering field of potential, the universe does something remarkable. It allows freedom. It does not command a particle to stand here or spin that way. It allows the particle to exist in a gentle openness, weighing possible futures like a musician considering which note to play next. The wave function holds all these options with equal tenderness. It does not prefer. It simply describes. You drift slowly along one of the glowing ridges. As you do, the light responds to your presence, not by collapsing or shrinking, but by acknowledging you with a subtle shimmer. The wave function, you realize, is not static. It is sensitive, responsive, alive with the relationships between everything in the universe. If a particle moves, the entire landscape reshapes. If a force acts, the hills shift. If another particle comes close, their wave functions interlace, forming a new structure of shared possibility. Nothing exists alone. Even the blueprint breathes. You feel a warmth in your chest as you explore. There is something comforting about this quantum map. It feels like the soft hum of intuition, the quiet sense of direction you sometimes feel in your own life. You think of moments when you sensed a path before you knew it consciously, when you felt drawn to a place, a person, a decision. Those feelings were not certainties. They were possibilities. They were your own inner wave function, the part of you that senses potential before form. The universe, it seems, shares this quality. It is full of quiet guidance. You glide downward into the valleys of the wave function, letting the light surround you. The glow here is softer, dimmer, like the far edges of a dream. These are the less likely possibilities, the paths a particle could take, but rarely does. You sense how these valleys still matter, even if they remain mostly untraveled. They represent the full breadth of the universe's imagination. The wave function never limits itself to only the expected. It remembers every option, holds every outcome with equal respect, even those that unfold rarely or not at all. You rise again, drifting toward a peak where the probability is highest. From up here, the wave landscape feels wider, more open. The hills stretch out in every direction, blending, shifting, responding. You sense patterns in the glow, soft rhythms that resemble music more than mathematics. You see how one ridge curves into another, how the forms echo each other with a quiet coherence. The wave function is not random. It is deeply structured. It holds symmetry, order, and balance, even as it remains flexible. You imagine this landscape stretching across all things, from electrons to entire systems. Every part of the universe has its wave function. Every vibration, every atom, every moment of motion carries tucked within it a map of possibilities. These maps exist even when unseen, guiding the unfolding of reality with a softness that feels almost loving. You feel that tenderness now, as though the universe is offering you a glimpse of how carefully it holds everything. As you continue through this ocean of potential, the glow shifts color gently from pale blue to soft gold, from gold to a warm rose. These shifts are not random. They represent changes in the energy of the particle whose landscape you are exploring. Higher peaks glow brighter, lower troughs deepen into cooler tones. You sense that the wave function is not a fixed picture. It evolves. It changes as conditions change. It reflects the living, breathing state of the universe moment by moment. You pause at another peak, sensing something new. Here, the wave function feels more focused, more defined. The possibility of a particle appearing here is strong. But still, nothing is certain. The particle is not locked into this place, not committed. The wave simply leans gently in this direction. You understand that the wave function is not destiny. It is potential. It offers the universe a menu of futures, but the universe chooses only when necessary. Until then, the openness remains. You take a slow breath, feeling how different this is from the classical world, the world of certainty, location, and hard boundaries. Here, softness rules. Here, the foundation of reality is not a fixed point, but a whisper of where things could be. The wave function feels more like emotion than structure, more like hope than command. It holds possibilities the way the heart holds unspoken dreams. As you soar over the glowing landscape, you begin to sense the presence of something larger beneath it. The wave function is not just a description of a particle. It is part of a broader fabric, connected to the fields that shape energy and matter. The probabilities you see are influenced by forces you cannot directly observe from here: gravity, electromagnetism, interactions with other particles. The wave function is both map and mirror, reflecting every influence, every relationship, every shift in the environment. You drift lower again, letting your hand skim the glowing surface. It ripples beneath your touch, sending concentric rings of light outward. You feel the way your presence alters the pattern, even from within this visualization. The wave function adapts instantly. This responsiveness reminds you of the way attention shapes experience. The simple act of observing something changes the way you understand it. Here, in the quantum world, observation does more than shape understanding. It shapes reality itself. You pull back slightly, letting the ripples fade. The wave function steadies. The glow smooths into a calm rhythm. You sense a kind of wisdom in this landscape, a quiet acceptance of possibility, an openness to change. The wave function does not insist that one state is better than another. It simply expresses the truth of what could be. As you move deeper into the landscape, you notice places where two wave functions overlap, two glowing fields of potential merging into one. You sense how their patterns intertwine, creating new hills and valleys, new probabilities. This is how atoms form, how molecules bond, how structure emerges from possibility. The wave functions dance together, blending, interfering, shaping each other. When they align, the glow intensifies. When they oppose, the glow dims. Reality itself emerges from these patterns of interference. You float above one such region, watching the glow flicker as two sets of possibilities overlap. The dance is beautiful, a delicate interplay of light and rhythm. You feel the same warmth inside you that you felt during entanglement, this sense of connection, of shared existence. The wave function shows you that even potential is relational. The universe builds its structure from cooperation, from harmony and interference, from the blending of different possibilities into one coherent reality. As you drift on, the glowing landscape begins to thin, the light softening to a gentle translucence. You sense that you are nearing the edge of this visualization. The wave function stretches out infinitely, but your current view covers only a small part of its vastness. You let the image fade slightly, allowing the concept to settle more deeply into your mind. You understand now that the wave function is not just a mathematical curve. It is the universe's way of holding space for possibility. It is the whisper beneath every particle, the quiet blueprint guiding the flow of potential into form. It is the gentle reminder that certainty is not the foundation of reality, openness is. You begin to rise from the glowing landscape, your awareness lifting like mist in morning light. The wave function dims, becoming again the soft hum beneath all things. You feel gratitude for what you've seen, the elegance, the flexibility, the quiet poetry of possibility. As you drift upward into the dark, you sense another idea waiting ahead, something about how these waves evolve in time, how motion emerges from possibility, how the universe writes its story through change. You breathe gently and let yourself drift toward that unfolding. You drift through the soft dark, still carrying the shimmer of the wave function within you, the sweeping landscape of possibility, the open fields of maybe. The glow of it lingers in your thoughts like the faint hum of a song after it ends. But as you move forward now, something shifts. The openness begins to narrow. The quiet hills of potential begin to fold themselves into a single, gentle shape. You are approaching one of the most delicate transitions in the quantum world, the moment when possibility becomes presence. You feel the air around you soften, as though it knows you are nearing a place where something subtle but important happens. The space takes on a dusky glow, neither bright nor dark, just warm enough to illuminate the transition you are about to witness. You breathe slowly, letting the moment gather itself around you. This is the domain of collapse, the tender instant when the wave that holds all possibilities chooses one. The idea arrives first as a sensation. You feel an openness around you, like a quiet room with many doors. Each door is a path the universe could take. Each one leads to a different version of reality, each plausible, each allowed, each held within the wave function you explored before. But now, something gentle moves through the space, something that feels like a soft decision, a settling. The doors do not close all at once. They dim. They fade. They loosen. And then, only one remains. You watch as a disturbance enters the scene, a small nudge, a whisper of contact. In the quantum world, this could be anything, a photon brushing against a particle, an atom encountering a measuring device, a faint interaction with the surrounding environment. You feel its presence before you see it, like a ripple running through a still pond. It does not force anything. It does not break the wave. It simply touches it. And that touch is enough. The landscape of possibility you saw before responds instantly. The glow of probabilities, the hills, the valleys, begins to tighten. The open spread of potential pulls inward, like a soft exhale. Everything contracts toward a single point, a specific location, a definite state. The wave collapses, not violently, not suddenly, but like mist gathering into a bead of water. The particle is now here, not there. The maybe becomes the is. You let the sensation wash over you. The collapse feels surprisingly peaceful, almost meditative. It is not a loss of possibility but a gentle crystallization of it. All the potential paths were real in their own quiet ways, but only one becomes the world you step into. You think of moments in your own life when decisions worked this way, when many options floated before you, open and shimmering, until something small nudged you gently toward just one. A phrase someone spoke. A feeling that rose in your chest. A detail you noticed without knowing why. And suddenly, one path felt real. The moment of collapse. You drift closer to the newly settled point, watching the glow around it steady into a soft center of certainty. The particle's location is now known, defined, no longer spread across a cloud of probability. But you sense something larger here, the realization that collapse isn't a permanent state. The wave will spread again. Possibility will return. The universe moves in a rhythm, probability opening, then folding into presence, then opening again. It is a breathing pattern on the smallest scale. You breathe with it for a moment. Inhale, the wave expands into possibility. Exhale, the wave settles into certainty. You feel the universe inside your own chest, rising and falling with that rhythm. You realize that collapse is not the end of the wave function, not the end of openness. It is simply one moment of clarity in a larger dance. The space around you shifts again, revealing other points where collapse has occurred, tiny flashes of certainty punctuating the sea of maybe. Each flash represents a moment when a particle interacted with its environment, when the world made contact with itself. Collapse is not rare. It is constant. The universe is always choosing, always settling, always crystallizing tiny droplets of reality from the mist of possibility. You float among these points, sensing how they shape the world. Without collapse, nothing would have formed. No particle would have a place. No atom could hold together. No structure could persist long enough to build anything. Collapse is how the universe commits to its own existence. It is how the world becomes solid, how matter becomes matter. You feel a quiet gratitude for it, the same gratitude you might feel toward moments in your own life that grounded you, gave you direction, gave shape to your days. As you drift onward, you sense another layer beneath this process. Collapse is not only about location. It can involve energy, momentum, spin, any property that the universe allows to be measured. In each case, the wave function holds an open set of possibilities until something nudges it toward a single outcome. The universe waits to define itself until something interacts with it. Reality is relational, conversational. The world becomes real through contact. This realization settles softly into you. You understand now that nothing exists in isolation. Even certainty arises from connection. The wave only collapses when touched. The particle only commits to a state when it encounters something beyond itself. The universe is built not from isolated things, but from interactions, from gentle exchanges of information, from relationships. You feel the truth of this in your own life too, how clarity often comes through connection, how choices solidify through conversation, how certainty forms when your inner world touches something outside. You drift through the soft dark, watching collapse flicker around you like distant fireflies. Each flash is a tiny affirmation, this is real now. The universe has chosen. You feel the beauty of it, the way possibility flows into reality, the way the world gently takes shape moment by moment. Collapse is not forceful. It is not rigid. It is simply the universe allowing itself to be known. You begin to rise slowly, as though lifted by the warmth of understanding. The flashes of collapse fade behind you, but their meaning lingers. You feel a deep comfort in knowing that reality forms softly, without hurry. The world is not built through thunderous declarations but through quiet decisions, through gentle narrowing, through peaceful commitments. Every moment is a wave settling into itself. As you drift upward, the darkness ahead begins to glow faintly. You sense that something else is coming, something about how all these settled moments accumulate, how the fabric of reality solidifies from many tiny acts of collapse. You move toward that glow, carrying with you the sense of a universe that unfolds not in leaps, but in tender steps. You remain seated in the hush that follows the old monk's departure, the woven mat beneath you warmed by the touch of countless practitioners who have come before. The lantern's glow is soft now, flickering in a way that mirrors the steady rise and fall of your breath. The air feels different, less like something you move through and more like something that moves through you, carrying the subtle fragrance of cedar and ink. Even the shadows seem patient, as though they too are waiting to discover what you will do next. You no longer feel the need to chase an answer or hold onto the thrill of revelation. Instead, there is a steady, unfolding confidence inside you, a gentle recognition that what you've been seeking is not separate from the one who seeks. It is as though your awareness has widened, stretching far beyond the borders of your physical form while becoming more grounded within it. Each breath feels like both a return home and an expansion outward. You listen not for a voice, a sign, or a sudden flash of meaning, but for the quiet rhythm that stitches the universe together. It is subtle yet unmistakable, like a heartbeat that belongs to everything. When you breathe in, the world arrives in you. When you breathe out, you arrive in the world. This exchange feels effortless, natural, and free of expectation. With your hands resting gently on your knees, you allow the moment to settle. You feel the tension leaving your body in soft waves, dissolving from your shoulders, your jaw, the space between your brows. Even your thoughts, normally so quick to dart around, move with unhurried ease. They rise, linger, and drift away without clinging. They feel less like obstacles and more like weather, passing patterns in a vast sky. You notice the sound of wind brushing against the temple walls. Instead of pulling you outward, it invites you inward. The boundary between the two seems thinner now, almost transparent. There is no need to choose one or the other, because both belong to the same stillness. You feel yourself softening into that truth, resting in it the way water rests in the shape of its container. A quiet awareness begins to bloom, a sense that stillness is not something you create but something you uncover. It has always been there, beneath the currents of your thoughts, beneath the stories you tell yourself, beneath the shifting conditions of your life. It is a steady presence, patient and unchanging. You touch it now, not with your hands but with your attention, and it responds by opening wider. Your breath deepens naturally. Each inhale feels like a gathering, each exhale feels like a release. You begin to sense that the power of this moment lies not in doing but in being. There is nowhere to go, nothing to fix, nothing to prove. And in that absence of striving, a quiet clarity emerges, gentle as dawn. Time stretches. Not in a way that feels slow, but in a way that feels spacious. The minutes no longer press against you. They drift like leaves on a calm stream, moving with a direction so subtle that it barely needs to be named. You settle into that rhythm, trusting its quiet wisdom. You breathe gently, allowing the thought to widen like a soft ripple through your mind. You rest in the openness of the moment, letting the ideas settle without hurrying to take shape. A quiet understanding unfolds within you, blooming slowly like light rising through a calm mist. You sense the universe leaning close, as if encouraging you to feel rather than analyze. The stillness around you deepens, and you allow it to carry you without resistance. You drift with the rhythm of your breath, letting possibility and presence mingle inside you.